Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, you daily dive into the news. My name is Philip DeFranco, and we have a lot to talk about today, starting with this. RFK Jr. is now reportedly starting an autism registry to track Americans with the condition. And according to CBS, this is part of sweeping studies that Kennedy announced in his first press conference last week. Which, if you didn't see, the TLDR of that press conference is that you had Kennedy falsely claiming that autism was a preventable disease caused by environmental toxins rather than genetics, and declaring that his agency will be launching a series of studies into the causes. Right in this, despite the fact that experts widely agree that 1, autism is not a preventable disease, but rather a complex neurological condition, and 2, it likely has a number of different causes, with multiple studies showing that, contrary to RFK's claims, that genetic factors actually do play a significant role. With Kennedy then also attracting widespread criticism for describing autism as this horrible affliction that ruins families and painting autistic people as totally incapable of functioning in society. Though I will say he did walk back his claims somewhat, clarifying that he was only referring to people on the more severe end of the spectrum. But regardless, the whole ordeal, it sparked a ton of backlash. And now, this week, we've gotten a little more insight into what exactly Kennedy's autism studies are going to look like. With reports coming in saying to conduct the studies, the National Institutes of Health will be collecting the private medical records of people with autism from numerous existing federal and commercial databases. And you had NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya reportedly giving a presentation where he told the agency's advisors that the new data will let researchers study comprehensive patient data with broad coverage of the US population for the first time, and adding, the idea of the platform is that the existing data resources are often fragmented and difficult to obtain. The NIH itself will often pay multiple times for the same data resource. And adding, even data resources that are within the federal government are difficult to obtain. With then CBS going on to specify that the data collected will include, quote, medication records from pharmacy chains, lab testing and genomics data from patients treated by the Department of Veterans Affairs and Indian Health Service, claims from private insurers, and data from smartwatches and fitness trackers. And from there, going on to note that the NIH is also in talks with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to broaden agreements governing access to their data. And as far as who will be able to see all this data, the NIH director reportedly said that between 10 and 20 outside groups of researchers will be given grant funding and access to the records in order to conduct RFK Jr.'s autism studies. But there, he also claimed that the researchers will not be able to download private medical data, promising that there will be state-of-the-art protections to ensure confidentiality. And with that, very notably here, CBS didn't provide more details about what exactly those protections will look like, and it's unclear if any officials gave more information at the presentation. And this is the outlet also didn't elaborate further on the so-called autism registry that will track people with the condition. And notably, what we've seen is that while other outlets have been unable to verify CBS's reporting, you did have Snopes explaining that NIH already keeps a list of registries for numerous different medical diagnoses, with that including various types of cancers, autoimmune disorders, and cerebral palsy. With the Health Institute saying that the registries provide researchers with, quote, first-hand information about people with certain conditions, both individually and as a group, and over time to increase our understanding of that condition. But regardless, what we've seen is that CBS report has sparked a lot of concern online about the general privacy violations, as well as concerns about how RFK Jr. might use the data given his alarming past comments about autism, with seeing many drawing comparisons to Nazi Germany and the euthanasia program where the Nazis rounded up disabled people and murdered them en masse. With, for example, people writing things on X like, I'm autistic, and when I heard RFK Jr. wants a government registry to track people like me using private medical records, I didn't think safety. I thought Nazi Germany, a roundup of disabled people, because I know history and I know exactly what comes after the list is made. And adding, this isn't about health, this is about control, it's about fear, it's about marking people like me, neurodivergent people, different people. Don't dress it up as policy. This is how roundups begin. You also had others arguing that this will just scare people from wanting to get themselves or their kids tested for autism, which will artificially reduce reported cases. So there, notably, you have some people claiming that's actually Kennedy's real intent here, or decrease the number of reported cases so he can claim that his actions have actually reduced autism. But of course, this also, as you have many saying that people are looking too deep into this, that the goal is just for more information, more understanding, and there's not a nefarious thing behind it. But that also isn't where the RFK Jr. news ends today, right? And that because he made a massive announcement about food dyes at a press conference yesterday. But a big part of why we need to talk about this is that there's been a ton of misinformation around this whole situation. When you go on Twitter right now, the top search results for food dye are all posts like Trump administration moves to ban essentially all artificial food dyes in the USA food supply at RFK Jr.'s direction, or US bans artificial dyes from all food products effective today. But those claims are incredibly misleading, if not downright false, right? Because what Kennedy and his team actually announced are a handful of different actions, none of which amount to a ban on all food dyes, and none of which will be effective immediately. Right? RFK Jr. did absolutely say that his agency will be eliminating 8 different dyes that are found in thousands of food products, including candy, snacks, soda, and much, much more. But the methods that they're using to actually achieve this goal are highly questionable. Starting off with, of the 8 dyes Kennedy claims to be eliminating, only 2 are actually going to be banned in any real way. And even that, it's going to take some time, with officials saying that in the next few months will start the process of revoking authorizations for citrus red number 2 and orange B. Though also notably, there you have experts saying this change really won't actually change the status quo much. With the saying, for example, Thomas Galligan, a principal scientist for the watchdog group Center for Science and the Public Interest, explaining that these 2 dyes are very, very rarely used, and adding they've essentially been abandoned by the food industry. And as for the other 6 dyes, Kennedy and his team say they'll be phased out by the end of 2026 as food producers reformulate to remove them. But, and this is a key thing there, when Kennedy was asked how this would be enforced and whether there was an official agreement with the food companies, he responded, "We don't have an agreement, we have an understanding." With other officials clarifying that the phase out of these dyes will actually be entirely voluntary. So while the federal government will provide guidelines, standards, and a timeline, none of this is actually mandatory. And with that, you had FDA Commissioner Marty McCary telling reporters later that he believes this goal can still be achieved even without formal regulations, saying, "There's no need to have a regulation or a statute when companies are volunteering to do it." But that is, right now, it's totally unclear how many food companies are going to comply. In part because, according to reports, literally no one from the food industry was even at the event. And while some trade groups have said they will phase out dyes, there hasn't been anything close to a unified industry response saying, yeah, we're on board. In fact, you have Bloomberg reporting today that industry leaders have actually said they did not agree to even the voluntary terms outlined by RFK Jr. and his team. Additionally, we've also seen some groups actively pushing back on the effort, with the International Association of Color Manufacturers, which represents the color additives industry, saying color additives have been rigorously reviewed, and adding, requiring reformulation by the end of 2026 ignores scientific evidence and underestimates the complexity of food production, with them then saying this process is neither simple nor immediate, and the resulting supply disruptions will limit access to familiar, affordable grocery items. Right, and that comment about scientific evidence is in reference to the fact that RFK Jr. and other administration officials have argued that this push is necessary to protect children from dyes, which they claim cause a host of behavior issues and illnesses. And to that point, some studies have linked certain dyes to ADHD and other neurobehavioral problems in some children, but the FDA has long maintained that color additives are safe and most children have no adverse effects from them. But then also, regardless, you have many experts saying that RFK's plan here, it's not going to do shit, with one calling the announcement less than a nothing burger. And hell, we've even seen people who support removing these dyes criticizing the move, like Galligan of the Center for Science and the Public Interest, who said that he wished that RFK Jr. had actually announced a ban on dyes, not a voluntary phase out, arguing the FDA has the authority to ban them outright if they wanted to. So it's a bit of a strange announcement, and adding, it's worth pointing out that food companies have made promises like this before. They've claimed they're going to get rid of these food dyes or other additives within a certain time frame, and then they have consistently reneged on those promises. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also, a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/Phil, or use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple, no coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/Phil, or scan the QR code on screen and use code Phil for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.